21% said their agencies hadn't started to plan.
You could change the federal retirement system. The Chief of Naval Operations says all the Navy's investigations into
The Office of Personnel Management wants to know what federal employees think of their benefits.
Welcome to the Federal Leaders Playbook, where high performers in the public sector can push their career forward by learning about the trends, innovation, and technology advancing agency performance. We're kicking off Season 1 by exploring the world of IT service management. We're talking about how federal IT organizations are evolving to manage budget cuts, security breaches, and ever-increasing service demands. Here we go.
Today's subject is going to be maturity assessment model. How does your organization stack up?
All right. I think that's a fascinating topic to dive into.
Are you excited?
You look excited.
I mean, I try to look excited. Yeah, it's the intro into every new organization is where are you today? So every ITIL book, every IT book, when you start looking at measuring organizations' performance, you got to start somewhere. And my personal preference is to start at where are you today? There's lots of ways to capture that. I've run into a number of organizations recently where, because assessments have been done for so long in so many different facets across IT and other parts of the business, that the word assessment is not seen favorably.
Do you think that the word assessment got a bad reputation because the organization feels like they already know confidently where they are, or that they've done these in the past and didn't get a clear result from it?
Yeah, I think, they believe they know where they're at. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like take offense to.
They do take offense to that. It's fascinating to watch, because at that workshop that we were doing, and when I mentioned the word assessment, we had been in there we'd probably 4 hours in the morning, and we were in an afternoon session, and I was like, okay, so we're getting somewhere. We're going to come in, we're going to help you do all these things. And I said, we should take a little time to do an assessment. And when I said the word take a little time, the guy sat back in his chair and he kind of looked at me and he said, Eric, I don't want to take any more time to do an assessment because you're going to go away for weeks and I'm not going to hear anything. And then you're going to plop some paper in front of me. And what does it mean? Right.
And at a broad and executive level, I know where I am and where I want to go, but I don't know what's preventing me from getting there and what challenges I can anticipate.
And that's where I would say, and sometimes I say it kind of in a negative way, I've been told, you don't know where you're at, you don't know what's preventing you, and I can help. So I'm learning through the years how to soften that, and I think our approach at that meeting was, through the first 4 hours of talking to you and several of your developers and several folks from the business, I've already done an assessment.
Yeah.
Right.
I already have that output of what I would tell you, but I only have a piece of it. And if you give me a few days and give me access to a few more people, I can complete that picture. Right. It'll make your upgrade more successful. It will make your organization improve the way that they're operating today. I'll call it whatever you want. I don't have to call it an assessment.
It's key too, and maybe you don't call it an assessment, but you're trying to get a baseline where they're at now.
Yep.
And that baseline then tells you their maturity and then how to drive forward with that. So that's also part of it, is grabbing that assessment, making that baseline, and then saying, this is how we're going to drive you forward in maturity.
Right.
But I have a question. People say maturity. Where are we getting maturity from? How do we measure maturity? Should I bring up another Wikipedia on this, or is it in a book? But how do we gauge their maturity?
Yeah, I think that there's many different resources out there that you can reference. I know CMMI is one of those. Yep. Just looking at, I know for us, from an acuity perspective, we know based on ITSM and where certain organizations are. So I know that there's the ad hoc, and they're doing certain things. It may not be fully documented. Process and procedures aren't fully communicated. So it's happening. It's just not in a streamlined way. And so as you go through that maturity model, the top level, I don't think I would like to know which organizations are actually there. I think most common is probably within 2 or 3, which is
right. It's a repeatable process. It's not maybe across the entire organization, but yeah, there are models out there that will tell you from 0, you're not doing it, or you are doing it in spreadsheets, which I love. You can do service management with a piece of paper and a pen. It's not the most mature way to do it, but if that works for your organization, that's a good start. So yeah, there are models out there. CMMI is certainly one that we reference a lot, and there are certain targets that you have to hit before you can advance levels of maturity. And when we talk maturity, there's an overall organizational number that you could apply, but there's also per process number that you could apply. Every organization that I've been to has some process for incident management. If a system goes down or the performance is degraded, they are getting in and they're fixing it at all costs, right? They are putting on their incident management hat and they are like, I'm going to just get this server back up, this application back up, the website working again. They're doing it. Some organizations have moved, past just doing it and they're documenting it. Some are moving past it and they're classifying it. Some are moving past it and everybody's doing it the same way. So you take it from incident management, which would be, if I'd say, across the federal government, incident management is done probably the most mature process across the federal government, whereas you look at some of the other more obscure processes that are down the road in a roadmap and they're at a 0. If you take some of the capacity management, you take a financial management, some of these that are obscure, your organization may never get there. You may not need to get there, but I would say you can go process by process and determine levels of maturity, which gives you a starting point.
Yeah, so kind of to the baselining and the assessment, there are different areas that you guys analyze or that we analyze, right? When we're, there's the infrastructure, there's the processes, there's, the tools, the culture. So there's a lot of different parts that are being assessed when we're going in and doing these assessments.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get called in a lot of times because their ITSM tools are failing them or they want to make a jump to a new tool. And so before we do any of those, support any of those decisions or give our recommendations, I want to know, where are you today with the technology? I want to know, where are you today with the user adoption? I want to know, where are you today in just overall organizational awareness of what you have, how you're operating, where are those pockets of excellence, who's doing it well, and where are the pockets of resistance. And as you go into these organizations, once you kind of break down those barriers of, I don't want an assessment, let me ask a few questions. I'm not here to call your baby ugly, but I mean, at the end of the day, I might have to, but I'll do it nice as I can. It's one of those things where if you give me an opportunity, we can come in, we can ask the probing questions about why is it this way, how, show me some documentation that got you here. And I'm not making recommendations in those conversations at first, but I'm going to use all of the information that we collect to make some recommendations. Then you get into what can we do quickly, because you have to show quick wins. You have to be able to show some value around ITSM improvements, and then you put them on a long-term roadmap. It's really, you got to break down the barriers. There is an assessment that needs to be done.
And it's really no different than any other goal you set, even in your personal life, right? I want to learn a new language. I'm not going to, wake up tomorrow and be fluent in Spanish, but I can take the first couple of steps and think about what my end goal is, where I am today, and what I need to do in between. Or let's say I want to run a marathon, and but I don't run at all today. Okay, how do you do that? Are we clear on what the goal is? Do I have an honest assessment of where I am today, which is not ready to run a marathon, but and then you can put a plan in place that makes sense for you and for your organization. So I know we've lived by that series of questioning really in every aspect of what we do, of where are we, where do we want to go, how are we going to get there? And Tom, to your point earlier, how do we know if we got there? Did I realize the improvement or the target that I thought I would get? Did I get something different?
Yeah.
Should I take a different approach next time? And that repeatable line of questioning really at whatever frequency suits your business. I think it applies weekly, monthly, quarterly. It's a great place to start when you're feeling like what you thought would happen isn't moving as quickly as it should. Maybe you're way off base, who knows? But it's a great foundation to keep coming back to.
Yeah, well, and that's why, that's part of the continual service improvement process.
Absolutely.
You're constantly going through those cycles to make sure that you're moving forward. You're not going back.
Yeah, I think last thing on assessment is that one of the most pleasurable contracts we worked on, and I thought was a great success, was that assessment up front where we talk to them about where they are, what they're doing, but as installing the application and knowing what to put in first and quickly. We talked a little bit earlier about Mythbusters. Knowing where the maturity helped us do the implementation, help get it in, and then get that first level of maturity where they're at in the system quickly. But then we have to tell them where to go from there, the roadmap. So how do we go about telling them now it's in, we've got your incident, and how do we get past the standard incident change that's always put in first to go beyond that? What's that roadmap? How do we do that?
Right. I think as you complete an assessment, there's two things that come out of that are critical. The things that you're doing well, praise your team. And again, with the communication and the sharing of those wins and accomplishments, people want to feel good about what they're doing. So anything in that assessment that comes out positively, shine a really big spotlight on that so people know and are encouraged to do more. On the con side, the things that you might not be doing so great, the next steps of improving that need to come quickly on the tail of that assessment, or it's viewed as just another piece of shelfware that isn't so meaningful 3 months down the road.
I think that momentum, that gets back to the federal buyers. When you're looking for these services and when you're looking for somebody to come in and do an assessment, don't just say, I want you to come in and do an assessment without adding on an optional period to actually do some of that roadmap activity or do some of the improvements from that group that you bring in. If you just say, come in and do an assessment and give me the paper and I'm going to do it internally, it will go nowhere. You need an outside voice to come in, assess your organization, and then get your improvement process moving. It has to be bundled together, or that word assessment, will go back or will continue to be just kind of a frustrating word for government buyers.
Usually our foot in the door to an assessment is a customer wants to do an upgrade. They're trying to move off of one platform to another. They're complaining about certain things are not working. And then you do this assessment and you're like, well, it's really not the tool.
Right.
It was your processes So your goal of where you want to go, I see that you want to do this, but is that really going to get you where you need to be? Like, you really should focus here on the process or on your culture within your environment. Or so there's a lot of outcomes that come out of that that's not where you initially came in.
I would agree. And I would say waiting for that significant event to happen to then call in an assessment, you're too late. If you're an IT leader of a service management organization, or you play some role in IT operations, you should be asking for an assessment today. When was our last organizational assessment? When did someone from the outside come in and tell us how mature we are in these processes that we're operating on a daily basis?
Right. Your environment is constantly changing. Your priorities from your leadership are constantly changing. So if you're still operating from a roadmap that was done 18 months ago, chances are there's either a lot more on your plate, or your resources have been, diverged to other areas of the business, and coming back together to say, does this plan still make sense?
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
And I would say in some of these large contracts that I've seen that are operational or data center operations that have a ITSM component to them, a lot of them have weaved in the person doing, that solicitation that is doing the work for you. They probably go back to their response and look in their response to see, are they going to maintain a roadmap for you? And if they are, and you haven't received it lately, ask for it.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about our assessments as well is opportunities for other areas for us to be able to come in and help them. Usually like I said earlier, we come in with they want to do an upgrade, they want to do some data migration. We do this assessment, we find out, hey, we can help you with incident management, problem management, change management, CMDB, like ultimately in order to reap the benefits of this effort that you're going down, this goal you want to reach, we can help you do some process improvement. We can help you do some of these other areas, establishing a service catalog or some of those other things that are part of just rolling out a new tool.
What do you think are key to continue moving them forward on the maturity level? Is it like finding that champion and maintaining the relationship with the champion, as well as constantly reassessing? As we talked a little bit about the roadmap on how to get them to the next level, what are our key success?
I think it's both. I think you need somebody in the government organization that understands the value of it and is willing to stand up for it. I think that's coupled with a person that is willing to look at all of the factors in an organization that influence it, because it's rarely, like we've talked about a couple of times, just the tool or just the process. It could be the way you communicate or the way you don't communicate.
Right.
An understanding of all of those dependencies that can influence how well that may or may not work, I think is equally important.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge that everybody is facing is, okay, we've started it. Okay, we have a tool implemented. Okay, people are using it, but what's next? How do we get to that? What's next? How do we mature? And it is breaking down each level of maturity within each process and putting a process improvement plan in place and holding people accountable to doing the small things, making the small tweaks. The communication is key. Training is key. Getting everyone on the same page.
Yeah,
so
don't be afraid to say, wait, where are we? I thought I knew, but based on what you just said, now I'm not so sure. Don't be afraid to ask those questions.
Yeah, so you're looking at the metrics that are coming out of your system. Are you getting what you thought you would get? And if you're not, make those changes. So.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Some good discussions on maturity assessment model. So thank you. If you're interested in today's discussion, we invite you to read our show notes and download additional free tools and resources at favorably.com. To learn more about Acuity or to contact any of us directly, visit Acuity's website at myacuity.com.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Leaders Playbook. Check out our next episode, subscribe, and visit federalleadersplaybook.com for more great content. See you next time.